Hey, what's up? This is Kev from the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast, and you're listening to the BS Podcast Network. Enjoy the show.
In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cotillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
What is up, Falafel? We have a very special episode of the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast for you tonight. I am your host, Kevin Cotillo, and it's special. It's special, Steve. It's not lies.
No?
You say that. Steve Marcus is obviously here and doubting already that we have a special episode. I mean, we're 10 seconds into the podcast, and you're already... What's your problem these days?
I don't know. Just right out of the gate. I don't know.
Yeah, what's your problem? We do have a special episode. We have a very, very big surprise for people tonight. I don't understand why you think that's not special.
Oh, never mind. I get it. I get the surprise.
Yeah. Listen,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Listen to me. I'm just going to put right in. I am back on the show tonight, and evidently I cannot leave you two alone for two friggin' episodes because you sound like two brothers who have just spent too much time together, and now the dad's got to come in and tell you both to separate.
It's really, I was trying to do a nice thing for you here, Sal, and make it a big deal that you were back with us tonight, and Steve just ruined it. He screwed it all up.
All right, Steve, go to your room.
All right.
Evidently, people were trying to replace me today on Twitter, so that was the thing. Thank you, John Bosch.
Look, we've tried many times to get someone to come in and replace you. Unfortunately, no one wants to work with Steve, so it's a fruitful effort.
I think that it's just that my shoes are way too big to fill, and what I mean by that is I have a big foot.
I mean your head? Do you mean your
Congrats.
head?
Congrats to your lady friends.
This is not true. I have a very average, normal size foot.
Let's continue on with the podcast here. We do have all three of us back. Welcome back, Sal. It is nice to have you here.
Thanks, guys. I was definitely disappointed not to be here for the last two episodes, but God damn it, kids! I mean, you guys have younger children. Kevin, your daughter is about to turn 2. Steve, your son is 4.
Yep.
So most of the stuff that they do is in the house. Everything that my kids do is outside of the house and involves driving. And then Sunday I was in Pennsylvania for volleyball. My son didn't make it back in time, and I was disappointed for that. But let me ask you guys, it's Christmas. It's Christmas time, and little kids, when you have little kids, Christmas starts like right after Halloween. So how's that going in your houses? Are you guys able to pay attention to football and do what you got to do, or is it like 24 hours a day Christmas for you guys right now?
Yeah, I don't know if you missed it, but I'm going to Disneyland for one day for Christmas.
Was that on last episode?
That's what Christmas is like for me. I live 9 hours away from Disneyland, and for Christmas, we're making a special trip while our son is young to get down there for one day.
And how are you getting there?
Driving a little bit. We're flying a little bit. Going down there for one day. From dusk till dawn. And flying back the next day.
Underrated
Everyone says that it's a phenomenal time to go to Disneyland, so...
The wife got an itch. She suggested that she was going to pay for everything. And,
did she see a doctor about that?
Nope. I'm just along for the ride.
Sorry.
I'm just
Did
going.
you? Was she along for the ride, and that's how the issue resulted? I have been at Disney World for Christmas, not on Christmas, but for the Christmas time of year, Steve. It is a wonderful place. I believe our good friend Zach Reed from the Dynasty Dummies is in Disney right now as we speak, enjoying with his family. He posted that he was listening to the Falafel House while walking around the park. So what's up, Zach? Enjoy your time there with your family. And all right, let's get to the football, Kevin.
Didn't you tell someone to kick Mickey at one point? Didn't that happen on this podcast?
Pinocchio. I told
Pinocchio,
Sal
that's right.
to
I'm
kick
sorry.
Pinocchio,
Yes, that's right. Kick Pinocchio
while he was at Disneyland or Disney World last year.
That's correct. Yes. Okay.
Another time that he was missing the show.
3 episodes in a row.
That's true. And Sal, just not that you apparently didn't really care about my particular answer. My daughter's still only 2, so she doesn't really notice it yet. And we live in this hellhole of a box apartment that has no room for anything remotely Christmas related. So
yeah, literally, the elf on the shelf is looking at you guys like, where am I going to hide today?
Exactly.
There's 4 walls in this place, and you already laying in a bathtub. Where am I going to go?
Exactly. So we are out of the Christmas spirit until after the holidays. We'll celebrate Christmas in February. But that brings up a good point, Sal. Before we get into the rest of the episode, aside from Christmas, there is another holiday this season that here in Falafel House we absolutely love.
That is true, and that is Festivus, and we're going to be celebrating Festivus this year. It's on December 23rd, and we'll probably record that episode on the 21st or the 22nd. And what we want everybody to do, we had a great show last year. You could go back and listen to it. It's in iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from. Send in a rant about the fantasy football season, because we know Festivus comes with a few things, and airing of the grievances is one of those. So send in a rant, airing your grievances about who it was that killed you in fantasy football this year. Was it a player or coach, a league mate, somebody in your family who screwed something up for you, somebody who distracted you like Kevin maybe and didn't set his lineup one week and he lost out on the Scott Fish Bowl. But anyway, send these things in, a recorded message, 60 seconds. Go back and listen to what happened last year. People let it fly. People cursed. People, we got great ones from our good friend Showcase 4 and from Dynasty Frank. These guys didn't hold back. So send them to falafelhouse@gmail.com, and they will air on our Festivus, second annual Falafel Festivus episode right before Christmas.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, we already have some good people lined up for this year. Some great entries that'll be coming in. So you do not want to miss it, and you do not want to miss being a part of it. So get your grievances in, because it's going to be a real good time. I'm curious to see what Steve will bring to the table this particular year. Last year, his grievance was by far, for me, the highlight of the episode, even though he mocked me in ridiculous fashion. And I still, to this day, am hurt to the core.
Now, I re-listened to that the other day, and I openly laughed hard again at that. And I listened to myself on the show, laughing very hard. But I may have a surprise for you guys. I might actually replay that by the end of this episode.
Wow.
Awesome.
All right. So now that we are all geared up for the Festivus season, I have a feeling we'll get into the rest of the show. We're going to talk about some news. We're going to talk about some general fantasy items, since this is our Tuesday show, which really, is kind of a wing it thing for us, as you those of you who listen regularly know. It is December 5th, and it is Tuesday. So I got a feeling that one of the grievances that we may hear over the next couple of weeks is going to involve Rob Gronkowski, who is actually suspended for this week. He will miss this week due to the hit that he laid on Tre'Davious White, I believe is the name, after the play. Dirty hit. Should clearly deserved a suspension. Appealed it. The 1-game suspension is upheld, so he will be out this week. Steve, you have him in one place, but it sounds like you have a bye. What are you doing in places where you don't have a bye week and you have to replace Gronk?
Yeah, you're definitely digging. You're digging a little bit, because this is the worst time to lose somebody like Gronkowski. And I think you really have to look at guys like maybe Steven Anderson, somebody that was highlighted pretty predominantly last week on the Houston Texans offense. And then we see today that C.J. Fedorowicz is going to be going on IR. So as long as he's healthy, he should be in line to get a lot of targets going forward. And then maybe Cameron Brate, somebody that obviously he had a great weekend this weekend, but the previous few weekends when Ryan Fitzpatrick was quarterback there, O.J. Howard was getting a lot of the love, so he might have been dropped in a few leagues. I would definitely be looking to see if he's there. Austin Seferian-Jenkins is someone who has been hot, although the last couple weeks he had that one touchdown called back again, and then last week he didn't do a ton. So he might be available. I'd definitely be looking that route. But a terrible week to lose somebody like Gronkowski. I want to know from you, Kevin, since you are a huge Patriots fan, is Dwayne Allen somebody that you would be looking at as just a plug-and-play for Rob Gronkowski this weekend?
I don't know that he's a plug-and-play type of guy. I really don't, because he's been awful this year. He hasn't looked good. He's very slow. Brady doesn't seem to have a lot of trust in him. He's been a little more active over the last few weeks. And obviously, Gronk's there, so he's not going to be a highlight, or a focal point in the offense. But you'd like to see a little bit more out of him. And when Gronk did miss a couple of games earlier in the season, or at least was slowed, he was, you would have thought that you would have seen him a little more, and they just didn't do that. I expect them to go more wide receiver heavy in this game against Miami. I think that it's entirely possible that they just kind of ignore the tight end position a little more than we're used to seeing. We saw last week. This is the great thing about the Patriots, and obviously I'm clearly biased, but they changed their game plan up so regularly on every given week that they're moving things around. This week they focused on Gronk. And the running backs. You've seen weeks where they highlight the wide receivers and the running backs. There's weeks where they highlight the wide receivers and Gronk. So I just think that you'll see more wide receivers. Maybe Brandon Cooks has a bigger game as a result of this. Maybe it sounds like Hogan's probably still not going to be back, but maybe he comes back and you see Chris Hogan kind of fill in that role. So I think those are the types of things you'll see. I don't know that I would trust Dwayne Allen when some of the other guys you just mentioned could be available.
So, in the one league that I own Gronk, it's my old school league, Dumb Cousin Donald's League, as Matthew Berry named it when he was on our show. And I typically only have one quarterback and one tight end in that league throughout the whole year because you really just don't need it. It's a very shallow league. But when you get close to the playoffs, you have to reload. And let me tell you something about that league. You have to load up your team by week 13 because there's no transactions the rest of the season. That's how it works. Very old school, very traditional. So this past week, I decided, I got Gronk, let me add O.J. Howard. He's been hot lately. And Cameron Brate does, like Steve said before. So then Gronk gets suspended. And so now I'm going into the playoffs with only O.J. Howard for next week. I'm still waiting to see if I get a bye week. Now, this is an offline league, and it's all done pen and paper, and then it's emailed to us. I usually don't find these things out till Wednesday and sometimes early Thursday. I could sit there and figure it all out if I want to, but I have gotten a little lazy with that in a year. So, yeah, that whole I listened to Kevin, Steve, and look what happened to me.
Yeah. If you haven't learned anything yet.
O.J. Howard is the better tight end. Fact, not opinion.
If he gets 2 touchdowns for me in the first round of the playoffs in Cousin Donald's League, Kevin's my hero.
You will that will occur. That will happen.
Wow. You heard it here. O.J. Howard, tight end 1 for Kevin this week.
I'm looking up the numbers right now just to see where they're at.
Oh, good God. Here we go.
So you can backtrack. I just want to make sure I can backtrack here real quick.
No, I just wanted to see where we're at. I'm not going to backtrack. I still think O.J. Howard's the better tight end. I think they should be utilizing him more often. Obviously, you are correct, Steve, in that Jameis Winston has some kind of connection with Cameron.
You say erection?
Whoa, no, connection.
Connection.
Connection. I'm not sure where you're headed there, but
headed.
I think they're interchangeable at this point, really.
Right, but see, here's the thing. Look at this. So Cameron Brate, 62 targets to O.J. Howard's 32 targets. So he's got almost double the targets, and yet he only has 140 yards more, And the touchdowns, obviously he's got 6 to OJ Howard's 4, but the catch percentage is way down. I mean, how do you not go with OJ Howard here? I just don't get it.
Now, I know we all follow Matt Harmon on Twitter, and he has been the supplier of next-gen stats this season. And I would like to see the average distance of the closest defender on each of those catches for OJ Howard and Cameron Brate, where we have seen multiple times that he is completely wide open and catches the ball and runs. No,
so the goal of the receivers is not to create separation and get open.
That is not a creation of separation. That is not what we have seen. We've seen blown coverages, and one of those things are more fluky than the other.
I see.
That's all. That's my argument. I rest my case.
A first round pick in the NFL, tight end, who had a great college career, is now fluky and not talented.
I'm not saying that OJ Howard is not good. I'm a fan of his, especially in Dynasty. It's just not.
Glad we got that figured out.
All right.
Fluky.
All right.
You heard it here. OJ
Listen, I almost feel like I'm not back on the show.
I know. Why are you being so quiet?
Guys.
I feel like I'm doing way more work than I expected tonight.
On another note, speaking of the rookie tight ends, obviously coming into the season, there was a lot of talk about specifically the top 3, which was Evan Ingram and Njoku and OJ Howard. And I mean, how rare is it that one of them shows the signs in a rookie season? But all 3 of those guys have lived up to the billing of just displaying their talent and their ability. And all 3 of those guys have really promising futures ahead of them. I think going forward, even Steve will agree that OJ Howard next year will be the guy over Cameron Brate. But yeah, I'm just impressed
that those all season long.
Yeah, I believe you have. I've heard you say it. I'm just impressed that all 3 of those guys appear to be heading in that direction where they're not going to be, anybody can still be a bust, but it's impressive. It's going to be a new generation.
I think, one of the things that I'm curious about going forward with these
Jarrell Adams?
Specifically with Evan Ingram, though, I will say this. I mean, the guy's an amazing talent. If you saw some of the catches that he was able to make this past weekend, and he's done it all years, he's incredible from a tight end, perspective to see those kind of catches and that type of athleticism. I'm curious if he was forced to be what he's been this year, obviously with all the injuries in that offense, and if they kind of rebuild some of these receivers. Odell Beckham comes back, and maybe they Sterling Shepard's another year more in the offense, and maybe they add a third piece to replace Brandon Marshall. If you'll see him take a step back in his sophomore year as opposed to a step forward, that's the one thing that's concerned with me. But obviously, he's going to have a long career. He's 23 years old, so he's going to be good for a very long time. But that is one thing that I will be a little concerned with going forward. Whereas I think OJ Howard will take over that role next year because Cameron Brate will be realized as a mediocre player at best. And
here's the situation you have. So you have a big time, top wide receiver in Tampa and Mike Evans. So OJ Howard will still be playing second fiddle to him. So you're going to have Odell Beckham Jr. in New York coming back healthy, and another good receiver in Shepard, as you're saying. So Evan Ingram will likely be – he could fight to be the second option, but he'll likely be the third option. But here's something, and I'm in New York, and there's obviously been a mess for the last few weeks with the Giants and what's gone on, and now that they fired the general manager and the head coach. And here is a scenario I've been hearing bouncing around. So Eli Manning stays with the Giants next year, plays that he mentors whoever the young rookie that they draft is, which is, I think, what Mara wanted them to do the whole time. But I've been hearing scenarios where Odell Beckham Jr. is moved out of New York because he's too big of a personality for a young quarterback to come in and take control of. And I think that he is definitely a problem in the organization. And I think that there's a possibility they can move forward with Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram as the two guys and feel comfortable enough to move a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. for draft picks or maybe a big defensive player or offensive lineman or something where they could build other parts of the offense. What do you guys think about that type of a situation?
So I think right off the bat, I'm curious to. I mean, I love the idea of it. I think that if I were them, I would be having those same thoughts, and I would be really trying to make that happen. Because while Odell Beckham's a next generation talent, and he's phenomenal, you're absolutely right. He's a little bit too big for what they need as far as if they're going to go with a young quarterback. I think that. While a receiver that's that talented would help out a young quarterback quite a bit, it can also be a detriment because he is the personality in the room. So, but I will say this, Sal, I if I'm any other team in the league, there's obstacles for trading for Odell Beckham Jr. and more so, I guess there's obstacles for the Giants in putting him in a deal to be able to move him. For one, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's a free agent at the end of the season. Right.
Well, the Giants could pick up the option. They have the right to pick up that option, and they could trade him, and they could franchise him and trade him as well.
So does he have the? For some reason, I thought they would have already had to pick up an option on him.
I believe that they already did exercise the option.
Yeah, so all right, so he is signed for next year. So I guess that my point is, I was going to say I thought he was a free agent, which makes it much harder for them to trade him. But if you're another team in the league, are you trading for Odell Beckham Jr.?
Oh, Steve, how about you take that one? My answer is unequivocally yes, but if somewhere where there's a quarterback in place who's strong-minded and runs the team, but what does Steve think?
Well, let me. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
No, he like you said, he's the next generation talent, and I think if you've got other pieces in place where you could potentially add him, and he is somebody that is can change your offense, I wouldn't see why not.
So I'm looking at it now. He's an $8.5 million cap hit. You have him only signed for 1 year. He is a guy that has clearly been an issue with regards to media concerns, how he spends his off days, whether or not he comes to the building on time, his overall work ethic. And on top of that, now you're talking about adding a wide receiver that's eating up a decent amount of your cap. And so you have to have the absolute right team makeup for that. And I don't know that any team is going to value the one wide receiver like that anymore. At least if I'm looking at it, I don't know that I do. I mean, I don't know that stud wide receiver is necessary on a championship roster anymore.
No, I mean,
yeah, I don't disagree with that, honestly.
I don't know if I totally agree with it either, though. And I think that there's teams out there, Kevin, and everybody does this all the time. I could get him to work for me. I could get him under control. And you see that all the time. And it doesn't always work out. And usually it doesn't because personalities are personalities. People generally don't change. But, we'd have to go team by team and say, could it work here? Does it fit here? And what's the quarterback situation? Is that quarterback respected enough and entrenched enough to keep control of the team? And we don't have the time obviously to do that tonight, and that'd be a great conversation for the offseason if this type of rumor continues to persist.
I'm just looking through.
I think what it comes down to is that Kevin, fan of the Patriots, has won five championships without having a huge $100 million wide receiver at their helm, right?
Yeah. That's part of it, but look at all of them.
But not everybody's Tom Brady. Is the problem?
Look at the last 10 champions. You're talking about the Patriots, the Broncos, who I think they have two great wide receivers, but I don't think they're necessarily those prima donna types.
No, they weren't the reason they won those Super Bowls.
Right.
That's for sure.
The Patriots again, the Seahawks. Nope. Baldwin's great, but he's not that guy. The Baltimore Ravens, again, no. And then the New York Giants in 2012, the Packers in 2011. I mean, Packers in 2011 with Jordy Nelson might be the closest thing you get.
Yeah, I'm not even sure he was Jordy Nelson yet.
No, I don't even think he was that great yet. And then it's the Saints with before the year before that, and that's Marcus Colston. I'm just saying.
Colson was never he was never an elite wide receiver. He was a good wide receiver.
Exactly. I'm just you're going back through these, and there's not many where you say, yeah, there was an elite wide receiver that carried them through through these championships.
Yeah, because wide receivers are reliant upon a different position.
But that's my point then. So why are you going to spend that much money and waste draft picks to trade for them?
No, I agree. That makes complete sense. Unless you're a team that has a ton of cap money to burn, and you've got other pieces set up, like maybe the Jaguars, they've got a lot of their defensive pieces set up through drafting, right?
Tom Coughlin is not trading for Odell Beckham Jr.
No.
Okay,
no.
Maybe not that specific scenario, but maybe the team management scenario in terms of having a defense set up young and having extra cap space to burn on offensive players might be that scenario. But yeah, selling the farm for an elite wide receiver, if you don't already have a quarterback in place that can utilize him, would not be a good idea.
Give me this trio right here: Odell Beckham Jr., Corey Coleman, and Josh Gordon. Welcome to Cleveland, Odell.
All right. Maybe the Titans are a team, but they just spent a fifth overall choice on Corey Davis. Maybe the Colts, but they have T.Y. Hilton. You look at other teams that might need it. Maybe the Carolina Panthers. They're pretty much, close to a championship level team, right? That doesn't have a great wide receiver. But outside of that,
how's about Washington? He could go play with Josh Norman.
I don't know. Have we spent like 20 minutes talking about this one thing?
Only on Falafel can you get 20 minutes on Odell Beckham Jr. while he's not eligible to play.
All right, awesome. Steve. Well, what else would you like to talk about today?
All right. Well, we definitely do need to move on from Odell Beckham Jr. But one place where we could still talk about Odell Beckham Jr. is on the draft app, where I'm sure all of us have him in at least one spot, probably in multiple spots on those season-long best ball drafts that we did way back in July and August and early September. And I have a couple of rosters that have suffered because of that. And that's why I love the idea behind drafting a new team every week on the draft app. And now more than ever, going into week 14, there are thousands, probably millions of not listeners, but fantasy football players who no longer have a season-long team to play. And you still have the itch, like Steve's wife. You still have the desire.
Whoa.
You still have the desire. Whoa. Wait, was that off air? We didn't talk about that on air.
No,
you still have the
never
desire.
Talked about that ever.
You still have the desire. Chelsea, I'm only kidding. That never happened. I made this up, and I apologize. But hi, Draft App. Listen,
Thank you for your support of this podcast.
There's a lot of people out there who need to draft a team this week.
You know what? There's a lot of people out there that do need to draft a team this week. And one of the greatest things about the draft app is that it is a traditional draft. You actually get to pick players, and you are the only one that gets those players. And you get to move on with, competing against your friends, your family, random people from the internet, whoever it is that you want to compete against. You know that you have the player and they don't. And in my mind, that's a fun way to go about it, because obviously with those, salary cap type leagues, you numerous people can have the same players that you do. But in draft, Steve, I know that when I draft Antonio Brown, you can't have him.
Yeah, and that's cool. Except for the times that, when you're in this tournament that you've been talking about for a few weeks now, the Golden Turkey, and you draft Mike Evans, and you're the only person that has Mike Evans. That's not so fun anymore. But the best part is that the next week you get to draft new people every time, just like you guys have been saying. So yeah, why not get in there and have a constant reason to continue playing fantasy football? And we all know at this point, fantasy football is what makes watching football fun.
So Steve, absolutely. You are no longer eligible for the Golden Turkey?
No, I got eliminated. It was Jordan Howard's fault. It was also Mike Evans' fault.
Didn't you miss the? Did you miss the podcast where he was miserable last week when you weren't around? And it had to do with the
Yeah,
fact that the turkey.
I did.
the golden
I did
turkey was
listen
over.
to the first half of the podcast where I got shots taken at me about Mr. Big Shot.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, with going back to the draft app here, because it is the thing we should be focused on at this point in the podcast. It is awesome, Steve. Even though you draft terrible teams and you got eliminated from this tournament, they are doing things on a weekly basis where they're getting people money back. Tyrod Taylor, if he obviously he left with an injury, and yet they're refunding money for people who had Tyrod Taylor in their lineups. Because that's just the thing they've been doing. They've been doing it
Actually,
all year, so.
Kevin, you know what they're actually doing?
What are they doing?
If you had Tyrod Taylor in your lineup and you won, they're doubling your money.
See, I should read that email, shouldn't I?
Yeah, they're doubling your
you
money.
should do better.
If you manage to win. Listen, I'm going to just go out there right now. I'm going to tell you two people to avoid this week on the draft app. That's Juju Smith-Schuster and Rob Gronkowski, because that's what I do for you people listening to the show.
We should talk
really
about
good.
that.
Wow. Yeah, that's really good. All right, so if you want to get into the draft app, go to playdraft.com/falafel, or you go into the iTunes or the Google Play Store, download the draft app, use promo code falafel. That's FLAFFL. If you deposit $10, they will get you into a free contest this weekend. So that's playdraft.com/falafel or FLAFFL as the promo code on the draft app.
Juju Smith-Schuster.
All right.
Suspended today for one game. Rob Gronkowski, he was also suspended for his cheat play that he participated in on Sunday. So, Kevin, being a Patriots fan yet again, do you think both of these punishments match the crime? Do you think the crimes are equal in nature where, well, said that word weird, where one was a penalty during a football play, where the other seems to be more of a calculated shot after the play had, obviously ended? Do you feel that both of these suspensions are fair?
Let me ask you this question as a, counter argument, I suppose. Do you think that the Juju Smith-Schuster play was not intentional and not dirty?
I think he definitely meant to knock Burfict on his ass, which he did. And dirty, I'm not sure if it was dirty. I didn't like him standing over him and the taunting afterwards. Not a fan of that. But I think the block was hard. It was meant to be hard. Dirty, I'm not sure if it was dirty. It was, it was just it was a tough football play.
That play was outlawed because of Hines Ward, a Pittsburgh wide receiver, specifically because of him, because he did that repetitively to guys and constantly injured guys. And to me, I think the problem here is it was Vontaze Burfict, right? And everybody's like, oh, well, he deserves it. And
sure,
he probably did need to get his ass rung up a little bit. But Steve, that's in today's NFL.
Yeah,
and they discussed this, on last night's game and on the radio a lot, that years ago. Boomer Esiason does a show here in New York, and he said, years ago, that's how we played every game. But that's been outlawed in the NFL, and that was a dirty hit.
I'm not saying that I'm not saying that he shouldn't be suspended for a game. I'm completely fine with that. I have no problem with that. I really don't. But I agree with you, Sal. If it wasn't Vontaze Burfict, I think the backlash would have been a lot worse. But because it was him, it was definitely toned down quite a bit. But I do think that Gronk's was worse than that. I think that it was in much more poor form.
I don't disagree. It was after the play, and it was a forearm to the back of a guy's head, driving it into the ground. So I agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah, and my point was, look, if you want to say that it was dirtier, I'm not going to argue with you. What Gronk did was disgusting. It was totally unnecessary, and he should absolutely 100% be suspended. My point is, both of them were intentional acts, in my opinion. Whether one was during play or one was after the play makes no difference on whether or not what the intent was. Both of those plays were done with the intent to, send a message or potentially injure a guy. And in my mind, if you want to be, whatever, I think Gronk's hit probably was less dangerous than what Juju did in actuality, because Gronk had control of what he was doing. I'm not saying it was right; it was worse, in fact, because of because the guy was down on the ground, right? The guy didn't know, you know what I mean? Like, I think that was worse, but I do think Gronk at least had control of the situation and could have impact how hard he hit him. Whereas in the play, it's much harder to do that, and the taunting aspect of it from Juju's made it even more clear that it was intentional. Like, he definitely meant to do that. So, look, they're both dirty plays in my mind. They both deserve suspensions. You want to talk about maybe Gronk should have got 2 games instead of 1, fine. But I think when the NFL makes these decisions, I think the one thing that they take into consideration, and as well they should, is there a track record of this? Does the guy have a history of being dirty? Has there been any previous infractions? And what's the overall attitude of the play? And I think you saw it after the game. Gronk immediately apologized, said he got out of his head and shouldn't have done it. And Gronk has no history of playing dirty. He's never done anything like that. And so, whatever, if it's a 1-game suspension and that's the reasons why, I don't have a problem with that. And the same thing for Juju. It's a young kid, never done anything like that before. If he gets a 1-game suspension, I think that's fine.
Well, while we're on that,
go ahead. If you turn it around and it was Vontaze Burfict making one of those hits, I think the guy should be suspended for 8 games or a season. Because at this point, there's such a track record for that. And
he probably would have been
every time.
Yeah.
It should.
It goes up every time for him.
Look at that. Look at the last time Burfict got suspended for a hit. I believe it was Antonio Brown last year, and he missed 3 games for that. So you're talking 3 games for a guy that does it repeatedly, and you want 3 games for a guy that's never had an issue in his career.
Yeah, it was the playoffs. It was actually playoff season 2 years ago, and he was suspended for the first 3 games of last season. That was a really hard-hitting game. You get these all the time, these AFC North games, and you're going to get that again with Baltimore. Baltimore's defense is playing really, really well, and they're climbing back into the playoff race. And you're going to get that again this week with Pittsburgh and Baltimore. But let's just point out what happened with Ryan Shazier, as we all know and saw, and that was terrible. He has gotten movement back in his legs. He's not out of the clear yet from any long-term damage, but the prognosis is obviously much better, and that was a scary hit to watch that happen last night. And then also Joe Mixon as well. He left with a concussion, and when he fell and wasn't moving for a little while, that was a little scary as well. It's just this. If we forget, it's a brutal game.
That's kind of the other thing with the Juju hit and then subsequently the George Iloka hit later in the game. I mean, you just saw 2 guys leave the game with what could have been very serious injuries. I mean, particularly Shazier. Like you would think. I mean, to have a play like that after seeing something like that, which was clearly an accident, right? I mean, the guy made a tackle and happened to hit his head and neck the wrong way. It looked like. There was nothing dirty about the Ryan Shazier play, but to see something like that and then go and do something within that same game where the intent is to basically take a guy out, I don't know.
And what's funny is that we watch these people do this every week, and things like this happen, and certain people still have the nerve to tweet people about how they ruin their fantasy team. And yet we see people getting carried off of the field on a stretcher for our entertainment, for us to watch a few nights a week. And when they don't do as well as we want them to do, we still have the nerve to tell them about it and to bring them down. And it's just that type of thing is it's rough. It's rough.
I saw Taylor Gabriel put out a post, a tweet in support of Ryan Shazier, sending out his best and best wishes, and said, we put our life on the line every week going out there. And some guy wrote back, oh, you don't exactly put your life on the line. And no, if you go out there and you could be paralyzed, You're putting your life on the line. You could be killed on the field. You put your life on the line. No, they're not going off to war. I get it. And we've gotten to the point now where we're so hypersensitive on that stuff in this country. We understand there are people risking their lives to defend this country. But in this sport, which has become that dangerous where you could be paralyzed, and paralyzation could lead to death sometimes, getting hit the wrong way and breaking your neck or something like that could lead to death. They do legitimately put their bodies and their lives on the line. It's not comparable to a soldier, but there is truth in that.
And everyone that says, well, they get paid millions of dollars to do that, that's cool. So here, if everyone was just like, hey, here's $3 million, but just so you know, for the next 2 years, you might get paralyzed at some point of that, you're going to be like, okay, cool, whatever. It's not the same.
Let me ask you that, Steve. Would you?
I don't know. It would be enticing. Yeah.
Someone gives you a $3 million check tomorrow and says, but you could have concussions or serious injuries or paralyzation sometime over the next 3 years as a result of this paycheck.
I think I would, and I think that's why a lot of other people do too, because you take that risk to get.
I'm on board with what you guys are saying, and particularly when it comes to the fantasy aspect, because let's be clear here, these guys have lives and families and stuff, and it's incredibly callous to think about your fantasy team when these guys are going through something like this or dealing with hits like that. But I will say this. There is an aspect of this that it is a choice to play this game. And we've talked about this as far as, Sally, you talked about it in one of our chats with your kid and how I think he decided not to play football. And we've talked about this with kids and people potentially limiting their children from playing football going forward. I mean, it's a choice to play. So there is an aspect of this that you do have to take responsibility for that as a player, right? I mean, I'm not saying that people should care about their fantasy team over players, but, there's also an aspect of this that they need to be aware of what could happen. And, backlash towards the fans because they could have suffered an injury. I don't know. I guess it's a give and take. And I just think there is, making it seem like you said, Sal, like they're not going off to war. Well, there is some truth to that. Like they're not going off to war, and they are playing a game that they're choosing to play. I don't want anyone to get hurt, and I'm not. It's not what I'm saying. It probably sounds like that, so I guess I'm the ass, but
that's pretty normal.
Yeah. I'll say this: there's an old quote from Lawrence Taylor, great humanitarian Lawrence Taylor, who he said, "Playing in the NFL is like being in a head-on car collision every single Sunday." And that's just take that for what it is.
Yeah, and it's true. And I mean, like I said, nobody wishes these guys to get hurt in any way, shape, or form. There's a chance they're going to. And I think we all have to realize that. And, I don't know. In any case, Ryan Shazier, we do wish him the best and hope that, he gets through this, because that was something you never want to see on a football field, and something you hear the stadium be that quiet. And I know my house was quiet, and I just kind of sat there staring at the TV, and I'm sure you guys did too, because it shocks you when you see it, and it's not great. So hope for the best for him. And
yeah, well, luckily for me, it's never quiet around here, because if nobody's around, my dog's always snoring somewhere nearby. So
it's true. Where is he? We have not heard him yet today.
Oh, he's snoring within hearing distance. He just I'm periodically hitting mute, and you cannot hear him.
It's nice to have your dog back on the podcast. All right, some other news and notes that we should probably get to. Let's see. CJ Fedorowicz, I think we talked about this, put on the IR. Let's see. Mark Ingram has been held out of practice the last 2 days now. Sal, are you concerned about Mark Ingram? And if he does miss time, is Alvin Kamara the running back one?
I mean, how could he not be, right? He's been running back one over the last 5 weeks as it is, like Steve's saying, and Ingram's been top five. But what is it that Ingram is missing with, Kevin?
Toe injury. So
yeah, that would hurt me, because. And I'll give Kevin a little a little praise on this one. And Steve was, had Ingram up there as well. In the one league where I actually drafted him. So I had him in a dynasty league that Kevin and I play in. But in the one league that I actually drafted him in this year, he has carried me, with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson has been really good. I have the two of them together. But really, legitimately, those two guys have carried me to the possible number one seed in a bye week. So I got to say, I was not as high on Mark Ingram as I should have been before the season started, and he's been excellent. So I'd hate to see him miss this week if I don't get that bye, because along with Gronk not being there, would severely hurt my chances.
Was that the closest we're going to get to you telling us that we were right?
Don't push it, Steve. I mean, there's no reason to go there.
Right, just curious.
I wouldn't have even gone there. Steve. That was probably not.
No, I want to hear him say it.
He's never going to say it.
Say it!
We already hear about how much he talks about Jamal Williams.
Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram in ESPN PPR standard scoring format are number 3 and 4 running backs. Ooh. So, interestingly enough, the separation is 40 points.
And where's Drew Brees?
Drew Brees is the number 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Number 9 quarterback.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. You just don't expect to see those kind of things. Any other news for you, Steve? Anything you got going on here that we should be concerned with?
That you should be concerned with? I don't think we need to get into all that. It's kind of personal.
Oh, wow.
I mean, the only other guy that I don't think you mentioned, Bruce Ellington, who's not if you're in a deeper league, he's been usable lately. He's also been sent to the IR.
Yep. Amari Cooper still in the concussion protocol. There was some concern over Matt Stafford and his hand. It doesn't look like it's broken. It's sore and badly bruised, but looks like I think he's going to play, but keep an eye on that. So he's definitely a guy that I'm sure a lot of people in the playoffs are counting on. So Jordan Matthews will be on injured reserve for the rest of the year. There's a guy that just cannot get healthy. But that's it. That's all I got for news, Steve. What else do you have? What else do you want to talk about?
You guys want to talk about where you finished in some of your leagues this year, and
Not really.
how many? Well, all right, let's talk about the Falafel League off the top. Oh wait, neither one of you guys made the playoffs there, so we could just forget that.
That's
good.
Really
Steve and I. Oh, I'll tell you what. Steve and I have a matchup this week in a league, and it's a 2-week matchup. We're not happy about that. And Kevin and I play in a dynasty league, and it's the John Vosh Dynasty League. It's the Supremacy League, and how John does it.
I called you out.
The 1 and the 2 seed get a bye week, and the number 3 seed gets to pick who they want to play from 4, 5, and 6. And Kevin chose me, and so we will go head-to-head to see who advances in that league this week. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So it's nice to see some of the leagues that we are in together. We will be playing against each other, so we should have some great stories Sunday night and next Tuesday about how they both lost to me.
Where did you actually finish in that league, Sal? Because to be quite honest, John Bosch reached out to me and said that I finished in 3rd place and I got to pick my opponent, and he gave me the list of 3 people. I did not look at the teams. I did not look at the standings. I did nothing except saw your name and said, "Yeah, I'm going against Sal."
Yeah, and I actually saw that he posted it, that you said that. So here's what I will tell you, Kevin. I finished 5th. We have the same record, but you finished ahead of me in points. But I lost this last week by less than 1 point. So if I would have actually won, I would have been in 3rd place, and I would have gotten a chance to pick. So we would have played each other anyway.
Oh, nice. Well, that's good to know. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm looking at this roster, and I'm
going to beat you.
I might have to throw Jimmy Garoppolo at you just for the hell of it.
Do it. Do it.
Oh, let's see. So Kevin, it's a super flex league. Right now you have Rivers and Roethlisberger in there, and I have Russell Wilson and Eli Manning, who, by the way, Eli Manning is going to be a QB1 this week.
Oh, my God.
I know. That sucks.
Do you know what's crazy?
Because he is.
I got to say real quick, for this entire season, we've given Kev a lot of crap about spending a ton of money on Jimmy Garoppolo on basically every dynasty league that he's been in. And after this Sunday, where he made his first start and looked pretty darn good for the 49ers, he now gets to start Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo for the remainder of this year if he would like to. And then going into next year as well, because Tom Brady is most likely not retiring. And so he does not even have to wait for him to leave to get to utilize both of these guys. So
that's correct.
Although it was terrible logic at the time that he paid all of this money for this quarterback, it seems to be paying out for him as we move on through this dynasty life that we are living.
The dynasty journey.
I'm going to tell you right now, and not only that, Steve, and thank you for the somewhat backhanded compliment.
Yes, that was intended.
I'm going to tell you right now that not only, any deal that you make, you're obviously trying to better your team. And in some cases, you make deals to better your team in the regard that you could flip assets for more if you buy early and sell, buy low, sell high, right?
Yeah. So
I can tell you right now, I could have absolutely 100% turned Jimmy Garoppolo into more money than I paid for him. I have had offers. I have talked to people about offers and deals for Jimmy Garoppolo in that specific league, and definitely could have retrieved more than I paid for him.
And you know what?
That I'm holding on to him.
You hold on to him until the offseason, and you'll double whatever you've been offered.
Even more.
Exactly.
Even more.
The hype
right.
Going from from whatever he does from now until the end of the season, going, the entire offseason, the dynasty community, he is one of those guys that is going to explode in value. And so, yeah.
He's not trading him. He's not trading him.
Oh, he will. He's not a Patriot anymore.
He's still Jimmy. He's still Jimmy Garoppolo. So
I was going to say, there's one Jimmy, and that's Hendricks.
Oh, that's true. But you can't hear Jimmy.
I can hear him. No, you listening, but you can't hear him.
You're listening, but you can't hear.
But so I have Garoppolo and Scott Fishbowl. I held him on to him all year, just the time to be eliminated for him to start.
Nice. That's always lovely.
And I am in one other league, and I just missed the playoffs in that, where I picked up a team that was already previously drafted, and I did have him there. Got eliminated just in time for him to start.
I do have Garoppolo in many, many leagues, and I'm glad that this, hopefully he'll play even better over the next couple of weeks. But I'm really, really intrigued. In most cases, I'm thinking about holding on to him, as you said, Steve, because I do think the hype is only going to grow. Because as long as he plays somewhat serviceable, knowing that Kyle Shanahan's the coach there, and seeing what they do in the draft is only going to make his stock go even higher. So, that you mentioned the Falafel Dynasty League that we're in, and all three of us made the playoffs in that one. So that's a nice little bonus for the podcast here.
That is true. Have we ever given out the names of the teams in that league? So let's give the full. Kevin, tell everybody what the actual full name of that league is. And Steve, don't beep it out.
Yeah. So the full name of this Dynasty League is the Falafel Elite Asshole Ninjas League of Assassins, and the backstory on that is obviously it was a Falafel Dynasty League that we put together with a group of friends of ours from Falafel, from the Fantasy Life app, and from other leagues that we, the other Falafel League, the redraft leagues that we play in, and we kind of collected a group of players that we thought would be a good fit for Dynasty. And the first week we put the league together, we were taking suggestions for names, and people said Falafel Elite, people said Falafel Assholes, people said Falafel Ninjas, people said Falafel Assassins, and we really couldn't decide. So we are now the Falafel Elite Asshole Ninjas League of Assassins.
And with that being said, we all decided to pick names that would somewhat fit into the protocol. And I came up with very simple Beverly Hills Ninjas, which is a Chris Farley movie. Chris Rock was also in that movie. And Steve's team's name is Jackie Chan's Balloon Knot. If you don't know what a balloon knot is,
look up Urban Dictionary.
The imagery there is just awful.
And Kevin's name, his team is appropriately named. It's Major Asshole, which comes from, of course, Spaceballs. And clearly, when you look at this league, Kevin is surrounded by assholes. Exactly. So. Right. And that's been a great league and a great group of guys. And like Kevin said, every single guy in that league is from one of the 3 Falafel relegation leagues. Some are in the main league, some are in junior, and some are in embryo. And some, like Elliot Anderson, might be out of it altogether shortly.
Embarrassing.
Now, didn't he make the playoffs? I thought he did make the playoffs.
Playoffs? Second-tier playoffs?
No playoffs for him.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Well, he did make the playoffs in the Dynasty League, so he's got that going for him.
He's playing against me this week. He's done. I've got Alvin Kamara. And Jamal Williams.
All right, guys. We are well into this podcast, and as Steve would say, we're behind, even though we really have no agenda or anything specifically to talk about. So,
well, before we get to those closing thoughts, Kevin, is that what you're going to tell us next?
I was going to tell you guys to get to your closing thoughts, but apparently you have one more thought before that.
Yes, I have. From last year's Falafel Festivus episode, the Steve Martin "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" poem.
Steve Martin.
That's
amazing.
You are old. You are old.
Wait, just made a movie like 10 years ago. Steve Marcus. Steve, as Kevin pointed out before, did an unbelievable job with this, and this is so worthy of being played again. And we want to give you guys a preview, if you didn't hear last year's episode, of what you can expect. So are you guys ready for this?
Absolutely.
Steve, you're up, buddy. We know you have a lot to grieve about.
I do. And this is so to share my falafel woes properly. I felt it should best be given in poem form to "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." So that is what I've done, chronicling my terrible season here in falafel. So here we go. 'Twas the night before draft day, and all through the house Sid Skeet was stirring to the chagrin of his spouse. The draft board was hung in the office with care, in hopes that a championship soon would be there. With a strategy mapped out deep in his head, nothing prepared him for this season of dread. They gathered on Skype and started to draft, and not 3 hours later, he'd gotten the shaft. After week 1, it started to shatter, and something was different. Russell Wilson looked fatter. All of his hope went up in a flash when Moncrief got injured and Alshon was trash. The season continued to deal him some blows, and now his frustration was starting to show. Then in the fog of his mind it came clear, a trade was the answer, but first, one more beer. So he hit up his league mates and sold him his tricks, and his roster was changed in a few simple clicks. Quicker than Kev on wedding night they came, and instantly fizzled, so he punched them by name.
Wow.
Glace, Early, Kelly, and Booker. Edelman too, you cheap pirate. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, I'll push you all off, and I'll laugh as you fall. He continued to slump, and he didn't know why, and for the 6th time this season, he started to cry. Relegation was looming, and it didn't seem true. With each mounting loss, his chances, they grew. He'd be out of falafel, he'd seen all the proof, and he climbed up the chimney to jump off the roof. And just before jumping, some fortune he found as L-Dog ran his team into the ground. He was dressed all in fear from his head to his foot, and he opened the standings, almost too scared to look. A couple of teams had started to crack, and Sid Skeet began to gain on the pack. His team was not out, it wasn't so scary, and he thought, oh my god, falafel might spare me. Fear changed to hope, and it started to show, and he still had a chance with just 3 weeks to go. His fists were clenched tight, and as were his teeth, as he set off to take down L-Dog that week. The worst trade partner ever, the crap he tried selling, and then would come in the chat like it wasn't smelly. With just one board loss, he'd be placed on the shelf, so he laughed when he beat him in spite of himself. Relegation was almost assured, yet instead, he was barely alive, and he still wasn't dead. He spoke not a word and went straight to work and filled out his lineup to beat Gio, that jerk. And just as his chances of staying, they rose, he lost yet again because his team really blows. It staying all the way through that week 16 whistle until victory came and he dodged his dismissal. But I heard him exclaim as he won his long fight, "F*** you, falafel, I'll be back on draft night."
That was outstanding.
So great. So great.
I think the Edelman cheap pirate hooker is my favorite line.
Obviously the favorite line for the majority of people was the one that takes the shot at me. Still hurts, Steve. I do not appreciate it one bit. But those are the type of things we're looking for when it comes to falafel, to Festivus. You can trash anyone you want. You can rant about any players, any issues you've had in fantasy, whether it's scoring, whether it's the fact that you don't like the bracket setup for your freaking championships. Whatever it is that you want to rant about, you can go ahead and rant. Try to keep it to under a minute for the submissions. Obviously, Steve gets a pass with a little bit more, especially with that kind of creativity. But definitely, it's a good time. Cannot wait.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to get to it again this year. I've got more shots at Kevin to take, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Close it out,
Steve. With that note, let's close it out.
All right, thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. You can check us out on Twitter at Falafel House. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for Falafel House on both of those sites there. And, of course, you can go to falafelhouse.com. So, yeah, go check all that stuff out. Sal, what do you got, finally?
I don't got a whole lot to say because I played that clip. I'll just keep it short. falafelhouse@gmail.com. Send the clips in today.
Definitely get your clips in and make them better than anything Steve could write, so that maybe he can't spend his 3 minutes trashing me. So, thanks again for listening, everybody. We would love to hear some reviews. So if you hit up iTunes or Google Play or wherever you get your podcast and leave us a review, it definitely helps us out. Also want to give shout out to Scott Fish and John Bosch and all the others who use fantasy to do some goodness this holiday season with the charity leagues that they ran and things like that. Scott Fish raised over, I think it was $16,000 for Toys for Tots through his Fantasy Cares. And John Bosch raised a significant amount of money as well through the Fantasy Eliminators. Those guys are doing great work. Check them out on Twitter and definitely thank them for all that they do. And if you missed the boat on that, definitely get in there and use your league to add some charitable aspect to your fantasy playing experience. And we will be back on Thursday night, I believe. Maybe Sal will be there. Maybe he won't. Really depends on how big time he feels. And until then, Steve, hit the button.